The more you are attuned to God's will, I believe the more your prayer life will reflect God's will. The more you desire to see God's will done, that's the deepest part of who you are as a Christian. You should have no doubts about your prayers being answered. Now, that said, does that mean that all prayers that are not attuned with God's will won't be answered? Well, I don't want to get into the theology of these things too heavily, mainly because I probably will step into some form of heresy before long, if I haven't already in some video before this. But that said, I want to get into what Revelation has to say here about prayer, because it is pretty interesting. I also want to make another preliminary remark. What I've failed to mention, because I completely forgot, and is absolutely fascinating about Revelation, is we're not seeing, as it unfolds, we're not seeing like a timeline, right? And that he's telling you a story and it's unfolding, and A to B. It's really like, all right, here's A to B from this perspective. And then here's A to B from this perspective. And then here's A to B from this perspective. It's interesting. It's like the same events described another way. With, it's fascinating. You could just study this book forever and really just be amazed by some of the things that happens in it. But this particular passage we're going to be looking at seems to have to do with prayer. So if you would, here is still in chapter 8, starting in chapter 8, all right? And it says, when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. So in Hebrews, it talks about the awe of God and this idea that the angels stand in silence. But what's interesting here is this precedes prayer, the consideration of prayer, and a sort of a processional advancement of prayer towards a conclusion. So the silence could have been a moment of silence that may represent what happens when we pray, right? We stop what we're doing and we pray. I have a particular time I pray. I do mine a little differently, my quiet time. I read when I wake up, and then I don't pray until I'm on my way to work. I have a pretty long drive. So I have a stretch of highway that's really dark. It's night. And I'm guaranteed to be going the speed limit. And I just pray. And there's often times where, despite there being a lot going on, I really don't know what to pray for. So I'm just silent. And I'm just trying to, and things come to me in those times, but I'm really just trying to listen to God. I'm just saying, what is it that God is maybe trying to communicate with me today? And then my mind starts wandering and I'm able to find things that I should be praying for. That just works for me. But here, so there is a quietness when we go to pray. But here it might be that what it's saying is, before God at this time, there is silence specifically for the prayers. That is quite a flattering thought, that among all these things we see in Revelation so far, that God would have a quiet time for us. It's kind of interesting thought. When the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. Then I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. All right, so you get this prelude, and then boom, right, the trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar before the throne. So we're told, to lift our prayers up to God as an aroma to him. And so I started this talking about being aligned with God's will. I don't know that we can always perfectly do that. And there's a theory about this particular verse where looking at the words and translating it might be better translated with, that the incense travels with the prayers, and other alternative views are like put to the prayers. And I wish that translation of put to the prayers was legitimate, because the idea would be that the prayers are made right for, before God. But the truth is probably with the prayers. Now, the way I think we should see this, as of right now, I mean, I could change my mind about it. You could have a different opinion on it, because it's revelation. It's difficult to translate. To interpret. But it could be here that that God is just pleased with the prayers of the saints. But see, here's the thing. I think you can make a great case that these are precatory prayers, that they're prayers of judgment. And I don't know about you, but I'd be very careful with those kind of prayers, right? I mean, very careful with those kind of prayers, because we're Christians and we want to see people come to know Christ. We want to see them be saved on the one hand. On the other hand, there is final judgment being described here. All right. So, well, let's get into this a little bit further. We're only going to do a few more verses here. It says, "And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God from the hand of the angel. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake." So, I mean, we do see this as, a reflection of the judgment that came down from Mount Sinai. That is judgment. I hope this wasn't meandering too much, but there's a lot to consider here. It's not easy to translate. To interpret. So all I have to say is, I'll say this with one final note, though. Your prayers are taken serious. They're taken very, very serious by God. And that should encourage anyone to go to him in prayer. I don't think a Christian should go to God with concerns that their prayers aren't pleasing to God, right? I don't know that we need to go to him and go, talk about something that's annoying us or frustrating us. I think those things are fine. But in our prayer life, we should be seeking to align our will with God's as much as we possibly can. Anyway, just some thoughts on these passages. Have a good one.